Alright, so this is solving polynomials part 2, and just to keep this video kind of short, we're just going to do the main problems. But again, yesterday we looked at factoring polynomials. We're going to use those to solve polynomials. So I'm going to kind of go past some parts here. If you missed school, maybe get those examples from one of your classmates. We're going to go look at quartic functions, what that is, and then again go into a couple examples just so that you are able to work on your homework, and then just to make the video short. So what we can do, we know how to solve quadratic equations. So if an equation is written kind of like a quadratic equation, we can solve it just like our quadratic equations, but then our powers of our x's won't be exactly the same. So we'll look at a couple of those also. And that's what's called using quartic form. So our very first one, we have this x to the fourth, 11x squared plus 18x. So we always want to think of a simpler problem when we have something that we that looks a little foreign, which would be like these. And we're aiming to try to get zeros, this number of zeros, to totally solve this out. And we're going to use the factoring method today, and sometimes factoring doesn't work. If the polynomial is prime, then it won't work. So let's look at that one. We'll look at this one first. If this was quadratic, remember we would do what multiplies to be 18 times 1, so 18, and what adds to be 11, and that would be 9 and 2. So on a quadratic equation, it would be x plus 9, because my a is 1, so I can go right into my factors, x plus 2. But this is to the fourth, so we know that the first two terms multiplied should be x to the fourth. So I'm going to make this power 2, because this could be written as x squared squared. So that makes that 2, and then if I were to factor that or finish that out, I would see that that would work. So we cannot, then we want to always check again to make sure, like we did yesterday, to see if I can factor either of my factors anymore. I can't, so I can put those factors then equal to 0. Subtract 9, x squared equals negative 9, square root. Square root of a negative we know is I, so it'd be x equals plus or minus 3i. Then the same thing with the x squared plus 2. Put it equal to 0. Subtract 2. X squared equals negative 2. Square root x equals plus or minus I square root of 2, or you can find that decimal. So my answers are plus 3i, minus 3i, plus I square root of 2, minus I square root of 2. And if I square these, I'll see that this gives me 2, and that gives me, or negative 2, and this gives me negative 9. I look at this one, what multiplies to be negative 1 and adds to be negative 2, I see that there's nothing that multiplies to be negative 1 and adds to be negative 2, so this one is prime. So we can't solve that by factoring. And you don't have any on your homework but we do want to be aware that that is a possibility. Alright, so here again, I know the difference of two things squared. Both of these are squared terms. So this isn't new here. So this is x squared squared. So this would be factored to x minus 16 and x squared plus 16. So I could at this time put those equal to 0, or I know that this factors to x minus 4, x plus 4. Sometimes that's good so I don't lose any numbers, because a lot of times we forget to do the plus or minus. If I put these equal to 0, or look at what I can add in there to make that 0, I'd get 4, negative 4, and then x squared plus 16 equal to 0, subtract 16, x squared equals negative 16, and then square root. Square root of a negative again is I, so x equals plus or minus 4i. So I have 4, negative 4, 4i, and negative 4i as my 4. All right, again, when you're doing your homework, make sure you follow your steps. Always factor out greatest common factor first. That will make everything a lot easier. Then factor using our different methods that we've looked at, and then factor completely everything out. So very last one, if you've talked to any of your classmates, this one is probably the one that's scaring a bunch of them, and you don't see a lot of this on your homework, but we want to talk about it. So we have x to the 6th minus 35x cubed plus 216. And we're not going to really talk about these solutions because I want you to actually solve these all out on your homework. So I should have taken that out, and I apologize for that. So we're going to, again, it looks like a quadratic equation, so I want to look at that as what multiplies to be 216 and adds to be negative 35. And I get negative 27 and negative 8. So when I factor this, I would get x cubed, because x cubed times x cubed would be x to the 6th, minus 27 times x cubed minus 8. And then these are a difference of two things cubed. So we could break that into, with the following that examples from yesterday, x minus 3, x squared minus plus 3x plus 9. And then this one breaks into x minus 2, x squared plus 2x plus 4. And then I want you to go ahead and put all of these equal to 0. So right away we see that 3 and 2 are two answers. But then I also want you to use your quadratic to solve these two out. So this, again, this slide doesn't show that, but on your homework tonight, I want you to go all the way out because that's where we're headed anyways. So we want to go ahead and get there with this example. So let's put this x squared plus 3x plus 9 into the quadratic equation. So it'd be negative b, so negative 3 plus or minus square root of b squared, which is 3, 9. 3 squared is 9, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2a, which 2 times 1 is 2. So we get negative 3 plus or minus square root of negative 27 over 2, and square root of a negative is I, and so I would allow you to leave that as negative 3 plus or minus I square root of 27, or 3 square roots of 3, which is what 27 is, over 2. So there's another two answers. And then we want to do the same thing with this x squared plus 2x plus 4. So it'd be negative 2 plus or minus square root of 4 minus 4 times 1 times 4 all over 2. So negative 2 plus or minus 4 minus 16 is negative 12 square root over 2. So negative 2 plus or minus I square root of 12 over 2. So a lot going on here. Take your time, work on it, and if you have questions, make sure you come in.